guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. So today I wanted to talk to you about our experience doing college tours in Texas with my oldest child. So my daughter is a junior this year, and we had been discussing kind of where she was thinking about for college. And as far as places that she might be interested in going out of state, because, the schools that are in state, we can go see at any time, none of them are all that far away. But when we were talking about out of state, she really only had interest in schools in Texas. And so we planned this whole road trip. And my brother lives in San Antonio with his wife. So we thought, well, that's perfect. We will road trip down there, visit a couple of colleges and visit him as well. And it was just a super fun week. So I won't get into too much that's not related to the topic of this video, but just know we had a blast. My mom came along with us and we had a lot of laughs. We stopped at all kinds of cute little restaurants and shops around the way. We were checking out just fun little roadside stores. Of course, while we were in Waco, we went to Magnolia. We checked out the silos, all of the cute little shops there. We found this adorable it's like a warehouse shop. It's up on the second story of a building, and it had all of these different vendors having their products there, and that was a lot of fun. We ate at the Magnolia table, and then when we went to San Antonio, where my brother lives, he took us to this fantastic outdoor shopping mall. I mean, it was just gorgeous with waterfalls and live music and every store you can think of, and we just had so much fun. Now, over the course of the week, we visited 5 different colleges, and I didn't pick any of these. My daughter picked them all. And just to kind of give you her criteria for what she did, she is interested in playing college golf. So specifically, she narrowed down the list by colleges that were Division I or Division II in women's golf. And then we kind of geographically placed it sort of along our route to San Antonio. So most of these colleges were kind of northeast Texas, and then kind of following the main highway down as we got towards San Antonio. So the 5 schools that we visited were the University of Texas at Tyler, Baylor University in Waco, Texas A&M in College Station, and then St. Mary's University and University of Texas San Antonio, both located in San Antonio. So I thought I would start off by just telling you briefly about each of the schools and some of the specifics that we found out related to homeschoolers attending for each of them, just to give you just a brief idea on each one. And then I thought I would go into some of the general things that we learned over the course of this trip. Now, because there was so much that I learned while we were doing these tours, I did go ahead and I typed up all of my notes. So if you see me glancing down, it's just because I don't want to give you any inaccurate information. There was just a lot. And I wanted to just kind of share with you, again, every college and university is going to be different in terms of the requirements for students, whether you're a public school student, private school student, homeschooler, whatnot. So I highly recommend, if you have schools you're interested in, definitely check out their websites for specifics. But I thought this might give you some general ideas, because there were a lot of things that were similar school to school and some things that I wasn't really expecting along the way. So first university was University of Texas at Tyler. We really liked this school. It was a great kind of first visit for us. It's not an overly large campus. So it's about 250-ish acres. And it's really beautiful because they have this centralized lake that all of the buildings are kind of oriented around. So it was just a very peaceful campus. And they have a lot of focus on the health sciences. They have a school of nursing, which we got to go tour because one of the girls on our tour was a pre-nursing, or was going to be a nursing student. So of course, my mom and I, both being RNs, we loved that. We loved seeing kind of how nursing school looks nowadays, and found out some things that were a bit different about how they approach teaching nursing in Texas versus here in Indiana. But my daughter was largely interested in kinesiology and nutrition, because she's interested in kind of being like an athletic trainer. And so they did take time to show us the facilities that those courses would be in, and their athletic facilities, their training facilities for athletes. And so it was really nice that they took the time to really personalize that tour towards the students' interests. anyways, this is a kind of a mid-sized public school. So about 10,000 students, and they do have graduate programs as well as undergraduate. There's the University of Texas Tyler like hospital system there. And so of course they've got like a pharmacology school, nursing school, health professions, medicine, and all of that. But specifically, some of the things that we really liked about the campus is one, that it didn't feel like overwhelmingly big. Like I said, everything was kind of centralized around this lake. They had a lot of really fantastic things for the students. You know, they do big gatherings and fireworks and cookouts, and there's kayaking. It's very safe. Like they actually told us that like there's scanners at all of the entrances that take pictures of every single license plate that comes through the gates. So that way, if anyone has like a warrant out, the police are immediately dispatched. So I really liked that from like a safety standpoint, especially if my child's going like that far away for school. The other thing that we really liked is that they have additional things available for students who might need help. So they have like a writing studio, they have tutoring at their library. They have students who audit classes. So if they've taken a course before and gotten an A in it, they actually will go back and like audit the class and like take notes and, you know, be familiar with what the course is covering currently. So if you're struggling in that course, you can go and actually work with someone who's been through it before, but also knows exactly what you might be struggling with at that moment. So I thought that was a really great thing for them to offer to kind of help students with some of those tougher courses. Now they had a few requirements for homeschool students. So minimum of 2.75 out of 4.0 GPA, and then you have to submit a high school transcript that has been notarized. And that idea of having your transcript notarized was kind of common across the board with all of the schools. A lot of them had it where you could submit an unofficial transcript initially, but you do have to have that notarized final transcript sent in that shows like your graduation date and things like that. One thing that was interesting is that at the beginning we were kind of doing like a kind of like a welcome meeting, and they had like a video and stuff. And of course they were talking about the scholarships that are available there. And they have a lot of scholarships that are based off of what percentile of your high school class you're in. And so it was kind of like if you were in the top 25% of your class and you had this GPA, you could qualify for this scholarship. So being a homeschooling family, I naturally like raised my hand and I said, so, we have a class size of 1. So how does that work for us? And lo and behold, one of the admissions counselors like pops her head around the screen and goes, by the way, I was a homeschool student and I went to school here. So here's how they did it for me. And it was all kind of like comparing based on her GPA, where she would have fallen when compared to like the local schools. So if based on her GPA, she would have been in the top 25% of the local schools, then she would qualify for it. So that was really nice. And we got to chat with her a little bit more afterwards as well. So they did have that. So that was for the scholarships. Now they did have some required coursework at Tyler. So things that they wanted to make sure you had. And again, this is similar from school to school, but a lot of times it was told that it was recommended. This is the one where they said it was required. So 4 credits, so 4 full years of English, 3 credits of math, 3 of science, 3 of social studies, 1 credit of PE, 2 credits of a language other than English, 1 fine art credit, 5 electives, and then speech. So it did say speech with demonstrated proficiency. And I think Emma kind of swallowed a little bit when she heard that, because the idea of public speaking is not something she's really like all about. And that can be a course that might be a little hard to facilitate as a homeschooler, because, it's just your family, right, that you're talking to. And so it can feel odd to give a speech to your family. So we have actually kind of discussed this a little bit, the idea that this might be the perfect kind of class for us to look for like a dual enrollment option, or even look at some of our local co-ops, because we do have a co-op that offers speech as a course. And so that might be something that we need to do next year during her senior year. They did say they will accept things like AP credits, CLEP exam credits. So I really liked that as well. And then they do have things like an honors program that require like an extra essay, an interview, and things like that. So they had a lot of information on different types of scholarships they had. And I believe this was one of the schools where the SAT, ACT was optional at this time. So it wasn't necessary for there. School number 2 was by far our favorite. It was Baylor University in Waco, Texas. I'll tell you what, like University of Texas Tyler did a great job of like making us feel welcome. Baylor, man, they set the standard high because you walk in and then there's people greeting you. They gave my daughter like, here's your bag with your stuff. Here's your personalized lanyard. And it was so cool because in their welcome center, they have like these floor to ceiling pillars that you can walk into, and it's like 360 degrees of video. Well, you go into one of them and she scans her little QR code and it brings up like a personalized message on the ceiling to her, which we thought was just cool. She got to go into their spirit store and they gave her a free t-shirt. She got to go to the coffee shop, get a free coffee. I mean, it was just like, they really made us feel like, hey, we feel so lucky that you were coming to visit us. Now, Baylor is kind of like, I wouldn't call it like an uber large university. It's kind of like a slightly larger mid-sized university, about 20,000 students enrolled, I think was the count. And it is a private Christian school. I really liked that because they made a point of talking about how like there are these required like chapel courses the kids have to do, and you can do hymn studies or theology studies or, certain parts of like the worship there on campus. And they have, of course, a lot of student organizations that focus on community service and growing in your faith. And I love that idea that if she was to go to a school, it would be a place where she could foster her growth in her faith, as opposed to feeling like she's constantly on the defensive about it. So naturally, we really liked that. Of course, being a private Christian school, it is pretty darn expensive, But of course, they have scholarships that are available. They said most students, will qualify for multiple scholarships. And additionally, when you apply to them, they automatically set you up on this website that helps you do outside scholarship searches as well. So you can put in different bits about yourself and it'll show you all of these different scholarships that you might be eligible for. So I kind of like that they acknowledge that they're expensive, but here we're going to help you find ways to make us more affordable. So I thought that was really cool that they did that. I also will say that I thought it was the prettiest campus that we saw out of all of them. It's kind of on the Bravos River, so they actually have a waterfront that they own, so they can have watercraft, and there are people who will bring in their boats and they'll do like boat tailgating for football games. All of the buildings have just kind of this cool like brick front. So I mean, they don't look old, but they look very established. It's very neat, very clean, beautiful landscaping. There were rose gardens. They do have a bear enclosure on campus because their mascot are the bears. It's two black bears that live there, and it reminds me of like an enclosure at like a wildlife sanctuary. So very nice. It looks like the animals are like very well taken care of there. We got to see the dorms, which were a little bit larger than a normal dorm, or at least the ones that I've seen in my experiences. We got to walk through like their science building. They talked about all of these new innovations they have there, all of the hands-on learning that the students get to do, things that they provide, like the fact that they have like laptops and desktop computers there if you happen to forget yours, or if you don't bring one, or if yours breaks, like you can just go and use them. So it's just lots of cool things that they had there. And then they took us kind of across the river. They showed us the athletic training facility, so where all of the student athletes go to train. We got to see the football stadium. It was just really lovely. Like, we loved that. And I love that Waco has all of the perks of like a bigger city, but it still feels, like a homey town. It very much reminds me of the town that we're from. So we liked that a lot about it. It says 126 undergraduate degree programs there, which is pretty cool. They also have a school of law. And then they said that their admission process, they do look at things kind of holistically. So it's not just your grades or your test scores, but they want to know about like what things you were involved in, where have you been, have you been working, where have you served as a leader, what sort of experiences have you had that kind of make you who you are? So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, for public school students, test scores were optional. However, homeschool students do have a little bit different requirements. So first part is that you do have to submit either classic learning test scores, ACT test scores, or SAT test scores if you're a homeschooler. So for that school in particular, one of those three have to be submitted. They're not optional. or if you go to a school that does narrative evaluations other than a grading scale. So I'm not quite sure what that means, but if you had narrative evaluations as opposed to a grading scale, you'd have to do testing scores. So that is a requirement for them. They also have like the age requirement that you have to be 17 years of age before the first day of class. And let's see, and then submitting your transcript. So transcript, completed courses, grades received, original signature if mailed, any other pertinent information on your educational background. So you do need to submit an initial one with like what you have so far, and then you have to basically resubmit it with your final grades and your graduation date. Like that's necessary to get those in there. They don't have required courses, they have recommended courses. And I kind of took it from the admissions counselors that recommended means like you should probably just make sure you have those. 4 years of English, right? 2 years of the same foreign language, 4 years of math, and it says including Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Calculus. 4 years of natural science with labs. Biology, chemistry, physics, things like that. 4 science courses. It says especially including biology and chemistry if you're planning to be pre-dental, pre-medicine, or nursing. So, which makes sense, right? And 3 years of social science, including 1 year of history. So those were the things that they recommended for that. And just like the previous school, they said they would take AP exam scores, they would take CLEP exams for credits, the SAT-2 for credits, things like that. So those were a couple of things about Baylor, but we really loved Baylor. If she goes to Texas, I really hope she chooses that school because I'd be all for visiting her there all the time. All right, the third school that we saw was Texas A&M in College Station. Now, this is like an uber large public university. There's like 70,000 plus students enrolled there. Now, that's including undergraduate and graduate, and they have like a huge veterinary program. They have an agriculture program, engineering. I mean, they have a little bit of everything at Texas A&M. And the campus is ginormous. It's so big. And it was just, I mean, Emma agreed. It was too big. Like I think we all just kind of felt overwhelmed with the campus as a whole. They had bus systems there for students, because you literally have to take the bus to get from your dorm to your classes, unless you want to walk for, half an hour to get there. And it was just a lot. They are very focused on their traditions there. In fact, I would say like 75% of the tour was the tour guide telling us about the different traditions of the school. And I kind of felt like I had to pry out information about like academics, like, hey, what about this? Or, hey, could you tell us more about that? Or, talk to me about campus safety, or talk to me about like rooming options, like things like that. It was, I don't know. I think if you like that big university style, or you're a fan of the school, I think, that's fantastic. It wasn't something that felt like a right fit for us. However, we did try to gather as much information as we could. It was another school where SAT, ACT scores were optional. But they will look at them if you submit them. They did not have any different requirements for homeschoolers that they could tell us about that were different from public school students. So we didn't have to make sure we submitted something extra in that regards. They do encourage, like there's a Texas Common App, and then, there's the Common App that anybody can do for applying. They do want you to make sure that you do the essay on that, though. They said that part is required. So their essay topic was, what unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced in your high school career that have shaped who you are today? So that was one thing that they do want everyone to submit. But they said that they look at applications, again, kind of holistically. They want to look at like the body of things that you've done, like what makes you, so to speak. this school was also the first time that we heard mention of the self-reported academic record, or SRAR. And so this was for students who've not yet graduated from high school and don't have like that official final transcript. So basically you go in and you like upload the information from your transcript. So your course titles, your grade, how many credits you got. And so it kind of lets them see like what you've already done. And then you submit your final transcript once you're all done and you have your graduation date and things like that. So they also said some optional things you can include are like a resume, a letter of recommendation, and it has like kind of a bit on like things that they're looking for: committed involvement to organizations, leadership roles you've done, diverse interests, things that you've been a part of, unique talents, and out of school experiences, whether that's in community service, youth organizations, religious groups, reading clubs, etc. It also said on the app they have a couple of short answer questions that they would encourage you to do. So that's just kind of what they had. They do have recommended coursework, but not required. Their recommended coursework includes 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 courses being Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, 4 years of science, and 2 courses should come from Biology 1, Chemistry 1, or Physics 1, and 2 years of the same foreign language. So again, it was one of those things where it was like, this isn't required, but you probably make sure you have that done. School number 4 was the University of Texas, San Antonio. This one reminded me a lot of a local school we have up here that's, it's kind of like a technical school. Lots of students there. It was 35,000 students. It's a big public school. They do have a huge focus there on helping students who are first generation college students. Simply like the population in San Antonio. San Antonio is the 6th largest city in the United States. And so they have a lot of families moving there who the parents have not gone to college, and so that student might be the first one in the family going. And so they really try to provide things that support those students, which I think is, I think that's really great, because that can be a big challenge, being the first one in your family to attend college. Interesting mix of like old buildings, new buildings, because the school has grown so much over the years. We got to see their art building. We got to walk through, we walked through the business school. I think it was the business school. They have a really cool student life area. It's kind of designed after the San Antonio River Walk. So there's like a cool bridge that goes over the pathway that was built by their engineering students. They have a water filtration system and recycling system that was also built by their engineering students. But it's kind of reminds you of like walking through an outdoor mall. So like, here's a little food eatery, here's a little study room, here is the IT area, here's the Apple My Computer Broke store, here's the gym. And so we got to see all of those different things. And then they actually have like a separate athletic center for their athletes to be at as well. SAT and ACT scores were not required, but are considered if submitted. And then they have kind of like admission guidelines. So basically, like if you ranked in the first 25% of your class, then there was like no, minimum SAT, ACT score that they were like looking for. But if you ranked lower in your class, they would look at your test scores to kind of see like where you landed on that to help determine admission. They also use the self-reported academic record to get your information initially, and then, the final transcript would be due later after that point. So other than that, they didn't have any other like requirements, but they did say depending on what major you were going in, there might be prerequisites that you would need to have, courses you would have to take in high school. So if you were interested in a particular area study, you might want to check out that. They had it all on their admission page, if you were going into, business or engineering or, pre-med or whatever, like courses that they think you should have or that you need to have before getting there. So definitely check those out if you were interested in that school and you have a particular major in mind. So that was something about them. The other thing, let's see, for them, you do have to submit an essay as part of the Common App application, and then they recommend a letter of recommendation as well. So the fifth school that we saw was St. Mary's University, also in San Antonio. This was the smallest of the schools that we saw, about 3,500 students. It is a private Catholic school, but they did say they have lots of denominations that are represented there. They do also have some theology courses that are required for everyone to take. I believe they said it was 2 courses you needed to take. And they, the student tour guide said it was, talking about the history of theology. And then there was a lot of discussion-based learning. So, good chance to kind of share ideas back and forth and hear things from different perspectives. Great class sizes. The ratio of students to professors were like 11-1, and average class size was like 16. Their big focus there is their School of Business. They have a really cool School of Business, and it had the history of one of their former students who almost had to drop out of school because he couldn't afford it, and then somebody helped him out, and he graduated and became like super successful. So he donated a ton of money back to the school to help build up the School of Business and provide scholarships, which I thought was cool. This school also really tries to help the surrounding community. They do something every year. They called it, what did they call it? Like the oyster bake. It started off as just like exactly what it sounds like. Like it was just like a little, oyster bake thing. And then it has grown every year for like the last 100 years. And now it's kind of like a huge carnival with like 5 stages going with different music and rides and tons of food vendors and all that. And the money raised from it helps to provide scholarships to students. But they said it was like 2 million people attended that last year. So I thought that was really neat. The one thing that felt a little odd about the school is like the whole campus is gated. And I did ask about like safety. I said, is there any issue with like crime in the area around that? And they said, well, nothing really ever happens on campus, but you do need to be mindful in the surrounding neighborhoods. So I don't know, like that was just it was a little off-putting for me, but when your school's smack in the middle of a city, it's kind of one of the things you have to consider. It definitely had the feel of an older established university, really cool, older buildings. It was a beautiful campus. They had, some beautiful features there on campus. And let's see. And then at the end, it was actually the only school that did this. But when we got to the end, they actually had all of us on the tour. They had us sit down and meet with the admissions counselor that covered our particular territory that we were from. So we got to sit down with the person who handles students from like Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, I think, or Illinois, and talk to her and get our questions answered more thoroughly. So as far as admission requirements, of course, the transcript and then an official transcript is required. Now you have an either or option where you have to do either an ACT score, SAT score, or a personal statement. So you got to choose one of the 3 to submit. And then while not required, they are recommending like a personal statement, a letter of recommendation, a resume, and then the test scores as well. So they have merit scholarships that are available there as well for different categories. It's based on, your GPA and things like that. So that's a little bit about St. Mary's. So let's talk about general things we learned along the way. And I'll start with test scores because during the whole pandemic, a lot of the schools just did away with the requirement for ACT, SAT. And as you saw, Baylor was the only one that required it for homeschool students at this time. But the feel we got from the different admissions counselors was that the optional status of testing is temporary. Like at some point that's going to come back and become required again. That's sort of how they told it to us. It was like, well, we can't really tell you when this is going to be required again, but it's going to come. So that helps me to know that, we're on the right track, making sure that we're doing SAT prep work, right now. And we're planning on having my daughter take the SAT, ACT in the spring. And then we will, do the same with my son next year as well. So I'm glad that we've kind of planned ahead for that. The other thing that we kind of learned is that just because we're in, a class of 1 as a homeschool family doesn't mean that we are excluded from different scholarship opportunities, particularly ones that are kind of based on your class ranking. So they will look at things like the GPA and compare it to other schools in the area to get an idea of where you would fall amongst the ranking in those schools. Another thing that we got a feel for were what types of courses they were looking for. So kind of across the board, 4 years of English was highly recommended or required. 3 to 4 years of math, although 4 years of math seemed to be the general guidance. Like I said, including Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. So at least those ones. Most of them had a requirement of 3 years of science. There was one school I mentioned that had, recommended 4, but at least 3 years of science. And we're doing 4 years of science, so that's great. The 2 years of a same foreign language, and then they really didn't have like a whole lot, beyond that. Oh, well, social sciences or social studies. So, your history courses, government and things like that, cultural studies or geography studies, 3 years of those. Like I said, we had the one school that recommended speech and PE and 5 electives. So those are all things that we have actually already either completed or, we will have all of that completed by the time my kids graduate. So I'm not too worried about that. But, if you're looking ahead and thinking like, well, how many years should we do some of these, that hopefully will give you an idea on some planning that you can do. And again, you should always kind of get an idea of what your student's general area of interest is, because some majors do have specific requirements. It seemed largely that if you were going into like any of the pre-med, pre-dent, nursing kind of programs, they definitely would have some additional requirements. Engineering degree programs had some additional requirements as well. As far as like living situation, almost all of the campuses required students to live on campus for the first year, unless, you actually lived in the immediate area of the school, permanently. So living on campus was a requirement. And so we got a chance to tour the dorms, at all of the different facilities, get a feel for them. And it was a pretty varied as far as what was offered. You had your traditional dorm rooms where it's like 2 people to a room, and then they had a bathroom they shared, or you had these kind of apartment style ones where it was, there were either 4 of you with your own individual bedroom, and then you shared a bathroom in like a kitchen living area, or you were 2 persons to a bedroom and there were multiple bedrooms and then a shared living space. There were larger apartments and single apartments, for upperclassmen. Some of them had sorority and fraternity buildings, some of them did not. I mean, it was pretty varied as far as the things that were offered from school to school. I was glad to hear that at all of the schools we visited, students were allowed to have their cars the first year, because that's kind of a biggie for us, is that if she's got to be out of state, especially in a town that she's not overly familiar with, I want her to have her vehicle there, not only to be able to get around and have a job or get to where she needs to be, if she's playing golf, but also to be able to come home or get to an airport to come home and things like that. So I was glad to hear about that. Total fun fact though, like this is so random. So my daughter's boyfriend works for Chick-fil-A, and so we were laughing because we got to the first school and we're doing the tour, and there's a Chick-fil-A as one of the eateries on campus, right? So we took a picture, we sent it, and we're like, oh, look, home away from home, it's here. And then we got to the second school, and of course they have their dining halls, but there's always these different eateries, right? And lo and behold, there's another Chick-fil-A. Third school, Chick-fil-A. Fourth school, Chick-fil-A. So we get to the last school, which is the St. Mary's. So, small school, right? And then, we saw there's their little dining hall, and I was like, okay, that's cool. We walked through the library, there's a little coffee shop. And I thought, there's no way a school this small will have a Chick-fil-A. Well, we round a corner at the end of the tour, and what should be there but another Chick-fil-A. And so Emma and I we were like dying laughing. We thought that was just so funny, that would be there. So it just was a funny moment. And so we just kept sending pictures of these different Chick-fil-A's to him. And he was like, no, I can't escape it. It was just really funny. Anyways, back to general things that we learned. So the idea of essays on your college applications. So, if you have any familiarity with the Common App, so it's the general app you can do and submit to multiple schools. There are essay options on there, or essay prompts you can do. So all of the schools did ask for the essay to be submitted, or they had different prompts that they wanted you to do for your essay. So being prepared to write the college admission essay, I think, is something that, you know, we can make sure that our students are ready to do, especially in the homeschool setting. You know, my daughter went through an essay intensive course that we did through IEW that focused largely on writing essays for college applications. And at the time, SAT still had an essay portion. So it was also the essay portion for the SAT, like that course took. And IEW has since revamped that course a little bit, but they do still have an essay intensive course, which really just focuses on creating that high quality essay. So I'm really glad I had her do that. I have it on the docket for my son to do before he graduates as well, because I felt like that was just a really great preparation for that. So I'm glad we focused so much on building strong writing skills in our homeschool, because I think that will help her with that. Other things we learned was that the campuses really have taken student safety to heart and have really made that a focus. Every campus had like the emergency towers, you know, where you can hit a button and campus police, or, you know, if, in some cases it was like the actual police department had a station on campus. So you would have security or campus police there, you know, within a matter of seconds to just a few minutes. You could ask for escorts to take you from like your library, from the library to your car, help you walk across campus if it's late. I mean, it was really nice to see, especially with all of the that's going on in the world, you know, to know that security was of high importance to them. The other thing that I really learned was that during these college tours, this was my time to take a step back. Naturally, I had questions, right? And I tried to focus most of my questions that were, you know, dealing with scholarships and admission requirements and things like that to the admission counselors, typically at the beginning of the tour. But once we started going through the tour, they were, you know, led at each one, they were led by an upperclassman student. And it was kind of nice because the teens in the tours kind of naturally gravitated up towards that student and were engaging directly with them. So they were getting their questions answered, and it was a chance for them to take a lead and for, you know, me as the parent to take a step back, you know, because really, like, my daughter, wherever she decides to go, like, she needs to feel like that place is a place where she can succeed and be comfortable. And that was a little hard at first, you know, because like you want to be up there, you want to be like really a part of this experience, but at the same time, this is like her first step towards that independent adult life, and I needed to let her have those moments. So by the time we got to like the third tour, I was feeling much more comfortable with doing that. But you know, it was just something that it was good to see. It was good to see her feeling comfortable interacting with the students and getting an idea for what kind of questions she wanted to ask, because she really had no idea what questions she would have before we got to the first school. But especially after that first tour, you could see her kind of churning up questions in her head, and she was asking plenty of them on the remaining tours. So I felt like that was really good. And I could also see from her face and how animated she was in different places, which schools really spoke to her overall. So when we got back, I did post up on my Instagram and the YouTube page asking you guys for what kind of questions you had regarding our trip. So a couple ones that I have that I don't think I've already answered. Someone asked if we needed to take transcripts with us. No, we did not need to take any transcripts with us at the time of the tour. The schools, you know, largely when you apply, you're going to submit a transcript, or you're going to do that self-reported academic record. So that's going to let them know what you've done so far, and GPA and grades and credits and things like that. And then you do need to submit that final, like, notarized transcript, you know, when your student's ready to graduate, when you have an actual graduation date and all the final grades in. So you didn't have to take that with you. There was a question that asked, let me look. Okay, question asking about foreign languages. So again, one school had the requirement for 2 years of a foreign language. Most of them, it was highly recommended 2 years in the same foreign language, but they didn't specify, which one, just 2 years of any foreign language. I had another question about what if your student decides not to go to school? Like, you go through the application process. I'm assuming this is what you meant. If you go through the application process and you get accepted and you say, okay, I'll go. And then at some point you say, no, I'm not going to go. So that policy is going to vary school by school and depending on when it is you get accepted. So one school in particular said that they have early decision, then they have early admission, and then they have general admission. So you can apply, as early as the early fall of your senior year. And if you get accepted and you make an early decision, that is like a commitment. Like, we have taken a spot away from everybody else and you have signed the papers and you are going here. So that, and they didn't get into specifics, but I'm assuming that means that y'all are going to be out some money if you cancel after that point. And then again, then there's early admission. So there's a little later on in the year, again, they're holding out spots for you if you commit, and then there's the general admission. So I think you really just need to look at the individual schools you're looking at and at what point you are looking to apply and accept. I mean, there's no harm in applying to a school, and if they accept you, then saying, well, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and decline that. I mean, people do that all the time. When I was in high school, I applied to several schools and got accepted, but there was only one that I was really wanting to go to, and that's the only one that I accepted their offer to attend their school. So I would just say, if your student's on the fence and they go ahead and they apply to schools, you can always say no if you change your mind. But if you think there's a chance that you might want to go there, go ahead and apply. I mean, there's usually a fee to apply to schools, and that's really what you would be out of, is the fee. Another question that I had was, do I think college would be a waste of time if your student's not big on reading or writing? And I think that's going to depend on the type of college you go to and what it is you're looking to study. If you're going to like a liberal arts university or even some of the more traditional universities, there's going to be a lot of reading and there's going to be a lot of writing, and it's not going to matter what you're studying. Most of these schools talked about general courses that all of the students have to take, a college English course, college speech course, college math level. There were things that you needed to take. The Christian schools had theology courses you needed to take, and there is going to be reading and there's going to be writing involved with those. I lost track of how many papers I wrote when I went back to school for nursing. I wrote so many papers. And even when I went to school the first time and I was a biology chemistry major, I wrote a lot more formal research papers, but still it was a lot of writing. So if you're going to those types of schools or studying those types of things, that's part of the deal. You're going to have those things to do. But there are colleges out there now that are more focused on like technical skills. If you're learning things like hospitality, HVAC, culinary arts, electrical work, construction management, there are courses that really, schools with courses that focus more on the actual skills that have to do with that particular trade. And that might be schools that offer more like, certificates or associate degrees and things like that in those fields. So I think if your student has an interest in one of those fields, like going to college for that thing isn't a waste of time. They're going to get trained in those skills and in those areas, and they're going to be prepared to go out in the workplace and do them. Yes, they might still have some reading and writing that they're going to have to do, but that's kind of part of growing up, is there's going to be parts of things that we just don't like doing, and sometimes we just got to buckle down and do it. So hopefully that answers that question for you. And then I had a question, which one was her favorite? So Baylor was the favorite by far, although she said University of Texas Tyler was like a close second. She really liked both of those campuses, both of the schools. Just felt like they were, they felt very much like home, but in Texas. Another question, how was the weather? It was hot. It was so hot. It was 95 like every single day, and like muggy, which like for me, like every day I was like, oh. But my daughter like didn't skip a beat. Like she was like, this is fantastic. She hates the cold. And of course, we live in the Midwest, so it gets freezing cold here. And I think that's one of the reasons why she was looking at Texas in the first place, because it's pretty much, beautiful year round. I mean, and their idea of cold is like an Indiana spring day. So she really liked that. In fact, we joked with we joked with the tour guide at Baylor because she goes, oh yeah, every year we have at least one snow day. And I'm like, snow day? Like you guys get snow here? And she goes, well, we get a dusting and then nobody knows how to drive in it. And I was laughing. I was like, oh man, you know, like snow day for us is like, oh, you know, a foot dropped overnight, but we'll probably just call it a 2-hour delay and expect you to get there. So we were laughing about that. And then, yeah, I think that's it for my questions. So if you have any follow-up questions for us about the specific schools, or, you know, anything that we learned, please, you know, drop a comment down below. I really encourage you to do these kind of college tours with your students. You know, especially if your kids are looking at somewhere out of state. You know, that was very much kind of like my requirement. I said, if we're going to consider a school that's out of state, and you're going to apply there, you need to see it first, you know, because you need to get a feel for the campus. You need to get a feel for, you know, the general feeling, what it is that campus has to offer, and just kind of have an idea of if it's somewhere where you're going to be comfortable, because, you know, it's a lot of money to go out of state. You know, whether it's a public school or private school, it's going to cost us more to go out of state. And then there's the distance and, you know, the added cost of, you know, being able to travel home for the holidays or to provide housing and room and board and all of that. So, you know, I really feel like if your student's looking to go out of state, you should make the effort to go and do a visit. Now, are we going to visit the ones in state that she's interested in? Yes, absolutely. There are, I think, about 5 or 6 schools across Indiana that she is interested in as well. And we will do college tours there, but there's not the same amount of pressure like, hey, we got to get it all done in like 1 week or 1 weekend, because at the furthest, I think it's like 2.5 hours to one of the schools that she wants to see. So we could easily like take a day, go see that school, and then be back home on the same day. We will make sure we do those as well, probably in the next couple of months. So again, as we kind of go into the spring and she gets ready to start her next golf season, we can make sure that we are, you know, taking care of filling out recruitment forms and things like that. Oh, and that is one last thing I will mention. So for all of these schools, you know, we had asked a bit about the sports programs, and they all have on their athletic pages a recruitment form. So it's basically like a form where you say, hey, I'm interested in this sport at your school. Here's my information. You may contact me about recruitment, essentially is what it is. And that way the coaches know that there is somebody who's interested in their program, and they can start to follow your athletic career. So they can start looking at your scores and things like that. We had 2 coaches that said that we could also send in a resume, basically. So there's like a whole resume that you do for golf in particular, that shows like your stats and your rankings and things like that. So Emma's working with her coach to help get that put together, so we have that ready to send along with the recruitment form when we do that. So that's just something to keep in mind if your student is interested in sports. And then don't forget, of course, if they want to play in NCAA division sports in college, there are specific requirements as far as things that you need to have filled out and sent to NCAA for your student to be eligible. I do have a whole video that I did about those requirements. I'll go ahead and I'll link that down below for you if you want to check it out, because there's quite a bit that we have to do for the NCAA for athletics if you are a homeschooler. All right, guys, that wraps things up for today. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some information that might be helpful for you and your high schoolers as you continue on your homeschooling journey. If you have any follow-up questions, just drop them below in the comments, and I will definitely be sure to answer them as best I can. As always, thanks for watching. Happy homeschooling.